So David Pakman laid out in great detail an answer to the question from conservatives, how will the left pay for all the free stuff they want? And this is really wonky, but I love it for that reason. Look at all this detail.
How to pay for all of that free stuff liberals want to give you. Here's examples, then we'll add them up. If we reverse the Bush tax cuts, we would raise $488 billion a year. If we reverse the Trump tax cuts, we would raise $164 billion a year. If we ended the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, we would raise $127 billion a year. In terms of ideas to pay specifically for Medicare for all, if we add a 7.5% employer payroll tax on companies, but we exempt the first $2 million in payroll. If you're a business with $100,000 in payroll, you're exempted. You pay nothing. The idea is to protect smaller businesses. We could raise 390. It says million, but it's actually billion. That's my mistake. And that would, on average, actually save businesses $9,000 a year. We could add a 4% taxpayer tax on income, exempting the first $29,000 a year. That would raise $350 billion a year. It would net save families, because remember, families are already paying for premiums and co-pays and all of that. If we did a carbon tax of $73 per ton on businesses, we could raise $300 billion a year. A wealth tax, similar to what Elizabeth Warren has proposed, if you tax wealth above $50 million at 2% and wealth above $1 billion at 3%, you would raise $275 billion per year. Some other ways to raise money. If we increase top marginal tax rates, if you create a 40% rate between $250,000 and $500,000 a year, and a 45% rate from $500,000 to $2 million a year, and then it's I believe supposed to be 50% rate between $2 and $10 million a year, and then a 52% rate above $10 million a year. These are taxes on really high earners. You raise $180 billion. If we raise the Social Security payroll cap from currently it's around $128,000 to $250,000, you raise $120 billion per year. There are Wall Street speculation taxes, which we could put in place, 0.5% on trades, 0.1% on bonds, 0.005% on derivative trades. That would raise $55 billion per year. We could look at estate taxes. You could do a 45% tax on estates over $3.5 million, and then a 50% tax on estates over $10 million, 55% estate tax when you get to $50 million estates. And if people are passing on estates bigger than $1 billion, a 77% estate tax. That would raise $31.5 billion. We could end fossil fuel subsidies. That would raise $26 billion. There's an accounting measure called LIFO, which means last in, first out. You don't have to understand what it is, but eliminating that would raise $11.2 billion. And if we raised the long-term capital gains rate from 15% to 20%, that would raise $5 billion. Now, you don't need nearly all of this stuff. This is the really important thing. I've given you a list of a dozen or so ideas for how you can raise money. You might not like some of that stuff. So let's just pick and choose one configuration. So now let's compare what these programs would cost versus what we might save. Medicare for all, tuition-free public college, paid family, paternal, maternal leave, and the Social Security expansion. We're talking about $1.432 trillion. I'm only picking a few of those ideas I mentioned to you. What if we eliminated the Bush and Trump tax cuts, did the employer and household tax that I mentioned, exempting, of course, the first $2 million in payroll for businesses and the first $29,000 in income for families, and raised the Social Security cap to $250,000? That would raise $1.5 trillion.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. Now, he says it a different part in the video that you didn't see there, that I'm not even getting into the fact of the matter that modern monetary theory has now taught us that the way we think of deficits is not the proper way to think of deficits, so therefore you don't even necessarily have to do these things that I'm about to lay out. but he says, I'm just gonna take what the right said, buy into the right's logic, and respond on their grounds. So in other words, I'm going to assume that they're correct when they say you have to pay for X, Y, and Z, and then I will respond using that logic and then breaking it down for you so that you have a solid answer, even if you accept their framing of it, okay? Which I think is awesome and makes perfect sense. And he lays out clearly, hey, even if I accept your concern trolling of, they're going to pay for it, not only do we have a way to pay for it, we have a way to pay for it and then some. And you don't even need to do all of these options that I'm laying out for you. And then, I've spoken about this before. He kind of touched on it there. You can do a mix of raising taxes on the rich, but also cutting spending in other areas. And like he said, this is how much we'd save if we end the Iraq War, if we end the Afghanistan War. So in many instances, it's not even like, new taxes. You're talking about basically reallocating funds. So I love this whole topic of like schooling the deficit mongers is one of my favorite issues because they're just so transparent in how hacky they are. Like, they literally never talk about the deficit in regards to endless war, ever. They just increased the military budget by over $100 billion. And nobody asked, not in mainstream media, not any of the politicians were like, hey, how are we going to pay for this? It was just like, of course we're going to pay. What do you mean we're just going to pay for it? So think about that. Over $100 billion. Just added for this. Let me be clear. The increase in this year's military budget. That's not the whole budget. It's just the increase in this year's military budget. You want to know how much free college would cost? About $60 billion. You could pay for free college for everybody. And then some, almost twice over, with just the increase in the military budget. But notice, you only hear the concern trolls when it comes to college, but you don't hear about it when it comes to the military. You don't hear about it when it comes to Wall Street bailouts. So we can afford this. Nobody says that. They're just like, what do you mean? Something we have to do, so we're going to do it. Nobody says that about, we just have to do healthcare. What do you mean? We just have to do college. What do you mean? So really, this issue has been used to try to stifle progress by bad faith actors. But I love that David took the time to give specifics to answer their question, because now there's a really clear and easy answer, and they absolutely have no rebuttal to it.